My stepdaughter paid me no mind during her wedding, and she gave my seat to her father. But by the time the moment arrived, I had already left. I'd paid my dues. Sarah and I had been married nearly 20 years. When we met, she was a single mother to a 5-year-old girl named Emma, curious, cheerful, and always bursting with laughter that could brighten any room. From the very start, Sarah was open about the marks her past had left. Emma's biological father, Mark, had never been dependable. He made empty promises, sent cheap gifts on birthdays, and disappeared again. Emma always looked forward to his visits, despite Sarah's efforts to manage her hopes. We had dreams for the future, Sarah and I, and she was serious about building a family. Emma seemed to accept me quickly. I put her first, hoping that with time, I'd truly grow to love her. But it didn't come easily. Each "I love you" from her felt a bit hesitant. The drawings she gave me often misspelled my name, but that was where our story began, with scraped knees from bike riding and midnight fevers, where I'd hold her while Sarah rushed for a thermometer. I stood by her side through every small moment. I cheered her on during her first school recital, helped her memorize poems for class, and caught her eye through the curtain when stage fright hit. She just needed to know someone was out there, watching over her. Mark, in contrast, played the occasional hero, popping up to make big promises like, "I'll buy you that bike or I'll take you to the beach." Emma always waited for those dreams to come true. Often, they didn't. And I was the one who'd stay behind and gently put the pieces back together when they fell apart. I never wanted to take her father's place. I only hoped to be someone she could count on. Over time, we grew close. I enrolled her in school, helped with her projects, and cheered her on from the bleachers. She started calling me Dad, and though I wasn't her biological father, I knew she meant it, not because of blood, but because of the bond we built. Years passed, and I supported her through college. I paid for most of her tuition, her books, even her rent. It wasn't easy financially, but I wanted her to have every opportunity possible. Mark, on the other hand, continued to float in and out of her life, making excuses, rarely contributing anything more than the occasional phone call. Still, when she graduated, Emma ran up to me with tears in her eyes and called me her father. "I wouldn't have made it without you," she said. "That moment made all the sacrifice worthwhile." So when she got engaged to Andrew, I was truly excited. I imagined walking her down the aisle, standing by her side once again for another milestone. She never said it out loud, but I assumed that moment would be mine. I helped with everything: flowers, music, even some of the reception costs. I supported her choices, listened to her giddy stories about her dress fittings, and covered a few quiet expenses without making a fuss. Then came the invitation. I opened it, expecting to find my name in a place of honor. But instead, I found nothing. My name wasn't even on the guest list. Even worse, she had chosen Mark to walk her down the aisle. At first, I thought there had to be some mistake, but when I asked her about it, her answer hit like a punch to the gut. "There's only one biological father," she said, "and I always imagined he'd be the one to give me away." I didn't have the words to describe how that felt. After years of standing by her through everything, it was as if I had never existed. She said it wasn't up to her, that it just happened, as if choosing someone for the most important moment in her life didn't require any thought at all. The day of the wedding, I arrived early. I wore the suit I had custom made. I sat quietly among the guests, watching Mark accompany Emma toward the altar. No one acknowledged me, not a single word, nod, or glance. It was like I was invisible. Something inside me broke. That part of me, the one willing to give and give without asking for anything back, started to fade. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the beginning of everything changing. As I watched her say her vows, I saw how radiant she looked. She was every bit the beautiful bride. But to me, The image was filled with pain, not because I didn't love her, but because I realized just how disposable I had become. 1 week after the wedding, Emma and Andrew jetted off to a luxurious honeymoon. Ocean views, 5-star accommodations, candlelit dinners. I saw the photos she posted, but said nothing. Then came the call. She hadn't even unpacked yet. Her voice was cheerful, light. She went on about the sunsets and the seafood, and how Andrew had surprised her with a private dinner on the beach. I listened. I nodded. I responded quietly. Then her tone changed. She brought up something unexpected. "Dad," she said casually, "there were some unforeseen costs during the honeymoon. We're a bit short. Do you think you could help?" For a moment, I didn't say a word. She sounded so sure I would say yes, like I always had. But something in me hesitated. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was heartbreak. Maybe I was just tired of being taken for granted. I said gently, "Emma, I'm sorry. I can't help this time." There was a pause. I could picture her confused expression. Then came the quiet. "Well, okay. I just thought, you've always been there." I took a breath and asked the question I'd been holding back. "Isn't Mark your biological father? Maybe he can help this time." She didn't answer. She hung up. And just like that, silence filled the space where a lifetime of devotion used to be. Even the most steadfast love can begin to fade when it's repeatedly overlooked. Recognition and respect are not luxuries, they're necessities in any relationship. Have you ever given your heart to someone and felt invisible in return? Share your thoughts with me in the comments. Sometime after that call, Sarah confronted me in our kitchen. Her words were sharp, cutting through the silence like broken glass. "You just left her hanging when she needed you most," she said, hurt radiating from every syllable. I told her it wasn't about money. It was about respect. I had stood by Emma's side for more than 20 years, every scraped knee, every late-night fever, every birthday party and school event. But when it mattered most, she pushed me aside. And now I was supposed to keep being her fallback? Sarah didn't seem to understand. Her instincts were always to fix things, to smooth things over. But this was different. Something inside me had shifted. I couldn't just keep giving and giving, pretending nothing had changed. Emma called again not long after that conversation. But it wasn't to me. It was to Sarah. She said Andrew was furious, overwhelmed by everything. She felt like I had abandoned her during a hard time. Predictably, Mark had disappeared again. And yet, nothing changed. Emma never addressed how much she hurt me. She just kept going, as if everything was the same. But I wasn't the same. I sat alone one night, playing memories in my mind like an old film reel. Emma's smiles, her drawings, her little voice calling me Dad. I used to believe the title didn't matter, that it was earned, not given. But now I wasn't so sure. Later that week, I got a text. It was from Andrew. "Hey, this is Andrew. I need to talk to you. Something important." I didn't answer right away. I stared at the message, my stomach heavy. Deep down, I knew what it would be about. Money. It always came back to that. We met at a nearby cafe. Andrew was already seated, tapping his foot, his coffee untouched. I sat across from him, silent, waiting for him to speak. "Hi," he finally said. "I know this might sound harsh, but we're in a tough spot." I nodded slightly, still quiet. "We're behind on rent," he continued. "I lost my job, and we can't make the next payment. If we don't get help soon, we'll be evicted." His words hung in the air, thick with desperation. I listened, then asked, as calmly as I could, "Did you ask Mark?" Andrew looked down at his coffee. Emma said, "They didn't get a chance to talk." I smiled, but there was no joy behind it. She chose him. Maybe it's time he steps up. Andrew looked caught off guard, like no one had ever suggested that before. "I'm not going to help this time," I said, not unkindly, It's not just about Emma, it's about me. I can't keep solving problems that aren't mine to fix. I stood up, wished him well, and left him sitting there alone, bitter, and nursing a cold cup of regret. Back home, Sarah was waiting for me. She didn't say much she didn't need to. She already knew. She saw it in my face. Emma and Andrew stopped reaching out after that. Sarah, though, didn't let it go. She kept asking, kept pleading. They need help, she'd say. She's our daughter. I finally looked at her, weary and aching, and said the words I'd been holding in. She's not mine. Sarah flinched, as if I'd struck her. How can you say that? She whispered. Because I gave everything, and she still chose him. She made her decision, Sarah. Sarah stared at me like I was someone she no longer recognized. She relied on you for everything. You can't just abandon her now. But I wasn't abandoning her. I was finally letting go. The next few nights were cold in more ways than one. We barely spoke. The house felt like a stranger's home. Even the warmth we once shared had turned into something distant, brittle. A few days later, I got a text this time from Sophie, Sarah's oldest friend, Emma's fun, loving aunt, who used to bring big gifts and silly stories. She was checking on me, asking how I was doing. At first, I thought it was just kindness, but over time, Sophie became the only person who truly listened. We started talking more. She never tried to fix anything. She didn't treat me like the villain in Emma's story. She simply understood. She saw me, truly saw me. One night, after yet another long conversation, I finally admitted something to myself. I wasn't seen in my own home anymore. Not by Sarah. Not by Emma. Not since the wedding. That night, Sophie took my hand. She said something that left me breathless. You've given so much, but who's giving to you? I didn't know what came over me, but I kissed her. That same night, she stayed, and I didn't stop her. For months, we lived in that quiet space between guilt and comfort. Sophie never asked for anything. She never blamed me. She simply stood beside me. Sarah started noticing. She stopped responding to my texts, stopped checking in. She knew. She never said the words out loud, but her silence screamed them. Now, 2 years have passed. The wounds are still healing. The scars still sting some days. But I've rebuilt a life. I've started woodworking again. I take long walks. I laugh more, though sometimes it feels strange. And then just recently, I got a message from Emma. Dad, I'm sorry. I hurt you. I still love you. Nothing will ever be the same, but I hope you can forgive me. I haven't answered yet. I'm still deciding. Even the deepest devotion has limits. When love is taken for granted, the most loyal hearts may eventually step away not in anger, but in quiet self-preservation. Can forgiveness mend bonds that feel permanently broken? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. The months that followed the wedding had a strange kind of quiet to them, like walking through a house after everyone's gone. I kept my distance. There were no more calls, no more requests, no awkward chats pretending nothing happened, just silence. But Sarah? She never gave up trying to get me to give in. She'd drop hints during dinner, bring up Emma in passing, or sigh heavily when I didn't respond. It wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about how I was changing. And then came another twist. At a small family dinner, Sarah brought it up again. She said Emma and Andrew were struggling, that they had fallen behind on rent again. Their landlord had finally had enough and evicted them. They're staying with Andrew's mother now, she said, shaking her head, in a cramped apartment. Can you believe it? A married couple living like that. I stayed quiet, eating my food. I'd heard enough by then to not be surprised. Sarah looked at me like I was a stranger. You could have helped. You should have helped. I finally set my fork down. Sarah, I'm not her father. She blinked, stunned. You've been her dad for 2 decades, she chose Mark. So if she needs help, let her ask him. Her face twisted with a mix of hurt and fury. How can you be so cold? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell. I just looked at her and said, because that's how I was treated. It was like she couldn't believe it, as though she hadn't been at the wedding, hadn't seen the way Emma ignored me. She needed you. You were the one who always showed up, and now you're just gone? I didn't answer. The words didn't come easily anymore. The man who once gave endlessly had run out of things to give. Sarah stormed off that night, plates left in the sink, the air thick with words unsaid. We barely spoke after that, and then Sophie stepped in again. At first, it was just a call here and there. Then it became regular check-ins, small gifts, shared meals. She made me laugh. She made me feel seen. And eventually, she made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. One afternoon, as we were sharing coffee on the porch, she looked at me and said, "They made you feel invisible." I nodded, like I didn't matter, like I never did. Sophie took my hand. "But you did. You still do." She didn't try to convince me to go back. She didn't guilt-trip me. She just let me breathe. It was that simplicity that drew me to her, the kindness without strings, the understanding without judgment. And the truth is, I didn't regret it. What I lost with Sarah, I found in Sophie. Sarah must have sensed something. She started getting distant, cold. When I was late, she would barely acknowledge me. If I missed a text, she wouldn't follow up. Still, she never asked directly. Maybe she already knew. Maybe she didn't want to hear it out loud. Then one evening, she finally broke. "You've changed," she said, arms crossed, standing in the doorway. "I had to," I said softly. "You found someone else, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "You didn't just give up on Emma. You gave up on me." That hit hard, but I didn't try to defend myself. I just looked at her and said, "I stayed as long as I could." We didn't sleep in the same bed after that. The house got colder. The silence between us grew so loud I could barely think. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife one more time, Emma reached out again. She wanted to meet, said she needed to talk, in person. I hesitated, but curiosity got the best of me. We met at a park, the same one where I used to take her when she was little. When I arrived, she was already sitting on the bench, fidgeting with her hands. She stood when she saw me, offering a weak hug. It didn't feel real. It felt polite. We sat in silence for a moment, the breeze rustling through the trees. Then she began. "I didn't know how much the wedding hurt you until afterward," she said. "I thought I was doing something kind for Mark. One didn't realize how much I was taking from you." I didn't interrupt. I just let her speak. "I've been thinking about it a lot," she continued, "and I know I let you down. You were always there. You were the one who stayed. I took that for granted." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry, Dad." That word hit differently now. Hollow, almost. Not because I didn't want to be her dad, but because I didn't know if I still could. "I never meant to replace you," she added. "It wasn't intentional. I didn't know how much it would cost us." I nodded slowly. "It wasn't about being replaced, Emma. It was about never being seen." She looked like she wanted to say something else, but couldn't find the words. Her eyes filled with tears. "I was hoping we could rebuild," she whispered. "Start over. I didn't promise anything. I couldn't. Too much had happened. Too much had been broken, but I also didn't walk away." We sat there for a long while, just breathing, just existing. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt the smallest flicker of something warm. Maybe not forgiveness, but maybe the beginning of something else. Sometimes, the people we love the most hurt us in ways they don't even understand. And healing doesn't always begin with grand gestures. It starts in silence, in presence, in the bravery to finally speak the truth. Have you ever tried to rebuild a bond after deep hurt? Tell me in the comments if you believe it's ever truly possible. The days after our talk in the park were quiet. Emma didn't reach out again, and I didn't follow up. Not out of bitterness, just uncertainty. Her apology stirred something in me, but it didn't erase what had happened. Sarah and I, well, we drifted further. What had started as emotional distance turned into something that felt permanent. The evenings once filled with shared meals, conversations, and quiet companionship had vanished. Silence now filled those spaces uncomfortable, heavy. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that we were just bruised. But months passed, and I realized Sarah wasn't just upset, she blamed me for everything, for Emma's pain, for not rescuing her, for walking away. She no longer looked at me the same way. Not with love, not with understanding. If anything, she looked at me like I'd become the stranger in our home. And somewhere in the middle of that distance, Sophie became my steady place. Sarah's old friend Emma's silly aunt was now my anchor. It started with shared coffee, then long walks, then evenings spent laughing at shows we both liked. With her, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't have to explain my hurt. She just got it. I never imagined things would end up this way. But what Sarah and I lost, I found with Sophie. We never planned for it. We never tried to hurt anyone. But it happened slowly, naturally, and one night, after months of quiet comfort, we kissed again. This time, it didn't feel like escape. It felt like home. Sarah must have known. She never said the words, but she stopped asking questions, stopped texting, stopped caring whether I came home late or not. 2 years passed like that. 2 full years since the wedding, since that turning point where everything cracked open. I built something new. It wasn't perfect. It was stitched together with hurt and healing, but it was mine. Then one afternoon, Emma sent a message. It was short, simple, but it shook me to my core. Dad, I'm sorry I disappointed you and hurt you. No matter what, you'll always be my dad, and I'll always love you. I know things can't go back to how they were, but my love for you will never change. I didn't reply, not immediately. The wounds weren't fully closed yet. Her words touched me, but they also reopened what I'd spent 2 years trying to heal. Could love still exist beneath the pain? Could we ever find our way back? I didn't know. But what I did know was this. Something inside me had changed. I no longer carried the same weight. The constant pressure to fix everything, to be the savior, the backup plan, the silent giver, I'd laid that burden down. In that release, I found peace. But peace doesn't always come without cost. Sarah, she never forgave me, not for refusing to help Emma, not for Sophie, not for choosing myself after years of choosing everyone else. Our marriage cracked and finally gave way. One night, after weeks of quiet arguments and cold dinners, we stood in the kitchen and just stared at each other. No yelling, no crying, just the unspoken truth sitting heavy in the air. She said, "You destroyed our family," I whispered. "I was never enough for it." The next morning, I moved out. A small studio apartment tucked into a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't much, but it was peaceful. And peace, at that point in my life, was priceless. Sophie never pressured me. She never asked for a timeline. She was just there. When I started putting my life back together, she was the one holding the glue. Then, out of the blue, another message came, this time from Emma again. "Dad, I miss you. I know things will never be what they were, but you were always there for me. And I want you to know, I see that now. I really do." I read the message 10 times. I didn't cry, but I felt something soften inside. Maybe, in her own way, she finally understood. It didn't fix everything, but it was a start. And sometimes that's all we can ask for. Love doesn't always look like a fairy tale. Sometimes it breaks. Sometimes it disappoints. But healing often begins not with a grand reunion, but with a quiet understanding that you mattered, even if it took someone years to say it. If someone you loved deeply finally said, "I see you now," would it be enough? Let me know how you'd feel in the comments below. This story speaks to something many of us come to understand later in life, that love, even when given selflessly and wholeheartedly, doesn't always come with recognition or reward. The stepfather in the story gave years of devotion, care, and quiet sacrifice, only to be left standing in the shadows on the most important day of his stepdaughter's life. For those of us who've poured ourselves into others, our children, partners, family, this story is a painful reminder that sometimes the ones we raise don't always see what we gave up to lift them. But it's also a story of dignity, of drawing a line when enough is enough. It reminds us that love should never come at the cost of our self-respect, and that it's never too late to reclaim your peace, even if it means starting over. At our age, we know that healing isn't always neat, but sometimes the greatest gift is the one we give ourselves: permission to walk away when love turns into neglect. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt invisible despite all you gave? Share your story or leave a comment to let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you.